The city was suffocating. Crowds, noise, buildings, they pressed in on Steve. He longed for open space, for fresh air, for freedom. He decided to leave it all behind. He packed a simple bag, a change of clothes, a flint and steel, a heavy knife. This was all he needed. Steve set his face towards the mountains, a new determination in his eyes. The air grew cooler as he climbed. The sounds of the city faded. Soon only the wind whispered through the trees. He was on the edge of a vast forest, a green sea of wilderness. Ahead lay the unknown, and with it a chance to start again. Steve took a deep breath and stepped into the woods. The forest was a different world. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, dappling the forest floor. Strange birds called in the canopy above. The scent of pine and damp earth filled the air. Steve walked for hours, following a path worn smooth by animals. He wasn't afraid. This was what he craved, the solitude, the challenge, the raw beauty of nature. As evening approached, he began to search for a suitable place to make camp. He needed shelter, and fast. The forest could be a dangerous place at night. Finally, he found a clearing near a stream. It was perfect. His first night in the wild awaited. Shelter was a priority. Steve needed protection from the elements and any predators. He chose a spot under a rocky overhang. This would be the base for his shelter. Using his knife, he cut down small trees. He dragged them back to his chosen spot. These would form the frame of his shelter. Next, he gathered stones from the riverbed. He piled them into a rough wall around the base of the overhang. It wasn't much, but it was a start. He worked until darkness forced him to stop. Exhausted, Steve ate a meager meal of dried meat and berries. He curled up inside his makeshift shelter, listening to the sounds of the forest. The next morning, Steve knew he needed better tools. His knife wasn't enough. He found a large, flat stone. He used this as a base to shape another stone into a crude axe head. It was slow, tiring work, but eventually he had a tool that was sharper and more durable. With his new axe, he could fell larger trees. He began to build a more substantial shelter, a small hut with a roof and walls. He also needed to find a more reliable source of food. His dwindling supplies wouldn't last long. Hunting would be essential for his survival. Section 5. The Hunt and the Hunted. Steve's next project was a weapon. He found a strong, straight branch. He carefully stripped it of bark and sharpened one end with his stone axe. It wasn't much, but it was a start. He practiced throwing the spear, feeling the weight of it in his hand. He needed to be a good shot if he wanted to eat. Days turned into weeks. Steve learned to read the signs of the forest. He tracked rabbits and squirrels, his senses becoming sharper with each passing day. He wasn't always successful, but he was learning. He was becoming one with the wilderness. But the wilderness was also a dangerous place, as he was about to find out. Section 6. A Night of Terror. One night, a pack of wolves descended upon his camp. Their eyes glowed in the darkness. Their howls sent shivers down Steve's spine. He grabbed his spear and his axe, his heart pounding. He had to defend himself. The wolves circled his hut, their snarls echoing in the night. One lunged at the entrance, teeth bared. Steve thrust his spear, driving the animal back. The wolves were relentless. They attacked again and again. Steve fought with everything he had. Section 7. A Glimmer of Hope. Just when Steve thought he couldn't hold out any longer, the wolves retreated. The forest fell silent, except for the sound of his own ragged breathing. He had survived the night. Exhausted but exhilarated, Steve surveyed the damage to his camp. It would need to be repaired, but that was a task for the morning. The next day, Steve decided to move his camp. He needed to find a safer location, one that offered more natural protection. He packed his meager belongings and set off deeper into the forest. He was determined to survive. He was starting to believe that he could make a life for himself in this wilderness. Section 8. Finding a New Home. As he walked, Steve noticed something strange. He saw a flicker of light through the trees. He crept closer, cautiously. The light grew brighter. He came to the edge of the forest and gasped. In the distance, Nestled in a valley was a village. Smoke curled from chimneys. Children played in the streets. For the first time in weeks, Steve felt a surge of hope. He wasn't alone. He ran towards the village, his heart pounding with anticipation. Section 9. A New Dawn. The villagers welcomed Steve with open arms. They were amazed by his story of survival. They offered him food, shelter, and friendship. Steve had found a new home, a place where he could finally rest and rebuild his life. As he sat by the fire that night, listening to the villagers' stories, Steve felt a sense of belonging that he had never known before. He had faced his fears and emerged stronger. He had survived the wilderness, and now a new adventure awaited him in this new place he could call home.